The guards dragged Junho through the crystalline halls of the palace. His wrists were bound with energy cuffs that hummed against his skin. He tried to keep his head up, tried to look brave, but his heart was racing. Everything had gone wrong at the space station. The peaceful meeting had turned into chaos, explosions, screaming, and then darkness. Now he was here, in the heart of the Velkari Empire, the place every human child learned to fear in their history classes. The palace was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The walls seemed to pulse with soft blue light. Strange plants grew from the ceiling, their leaves shimmering like metal. The air smelled sweet and sharp at the same time, like flowers mixed with electricity. Junho had studied alien cultures for years, but nothing prepared him for this. They stopped in front of massive doors. Each door was as tall as a building, carved with images of battles and creatures Junho didn't recognize. The guards spoke to each other in their clicking musical language. Then the doors opened. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that Junho couldn't see the top. More of those glowing plants hung down like curtains of light. At the far end of the room, on a throne made of black stone and silver metal, sat Queen Aerie. Junho had seen pictures of her in intelligence reports. They didn't do her justice. She was tall, much taller than any human, with skin that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue. Patterns of light moved across her face and arms like living tattoos. Her eyes were large and golden, with no white in them at all. She wore armor that looked like it was grown rather than made, all smooth curves and sharp edges at once. She was terrifying. She was magnificent. The guards forced Junho to his knees. One of them spoke to the queen in their language. Junho caught a few words. He'd been studying Velkari speech for years, but they talked too fast. He heard human and spy and execution. His mouth went dry. Queen Aerie stood. Even from across the massive room, her presence filled the space. She walked down the steps from her throne, each movement graceful and deliberate. When she reached Junho, she studied him the way a scientist might study a new species of insect. "You speak our language." Her voice was deep and resonant, like music from a cello. She spoke in perfect English. Junho swallowed hard. "A little of yours." "You speak mine very well." "I make it my business to understand my enemies." She circled him slowly. "You are Han Junho, cultural attaché to the Terran Coalition. You were at Station Meridian when my forces arrived." "I was at a peace conference," Junho said. He knew he should probably stay quiet, but fear made him bold. "We were there to talk, not fight." "Peace." The queen said the word like it tasted bitter. "Your people bomb our colonies and then talk of peace. Your people raid our supply lines and then claim self-defense," Junho shot back. Then he realized what he'd done. He'd just argued with an alien queen who could have him killed with a word. But Queen Aerie didn't look angry. If anything, she looked surprised. She stopped circling and stood in front of him. "You do not beg. You do not cry. Most humans we capture can do nothing but plead for their lives." "Would begging change anything?" Junho asked. "No. Then why waste both of our time?" Something flickered in those golden eyes. It might have been respect. It might have been amusement. "Your intelligence reports say you were a diplomat, that you studied our culture. What do you know of us?" Junho thought carefully before speaking. "I know that your people have a civilization that spans 100 worlds. I know your history goes back 10,000 years. I know you value honor and strength and family above all else. I know humans call you monsters, but monsters don't build things as beautiful as this palace." The queen was silent for a long moment. The patterns on her skin pulsed brighter. "You are either very wise or very foolish." "Probably both," Junho admitted. The queen turned to her guards and spoke in Velkari. They responded with what sounded like protests, but she cut them off with a sharp gesture. They bowed and left the room, leaving Junho alone with the most powerful being in this part of the galaxy. "I should execute you," Queen Aerie said, walking back toward her throne. "You are a spy. You have seen the inside of my palace. You know our security." "I'm not a spy," Junho said. "I'm a teacher. I teach people about cultures and languages. I was at that station to help people understand each other. And yet here you are, a prisoner of war." "Is there a war? I thought we were just in a very aggressive peace." The Queen actually laughed. It was a startling sound, like bells ringing underwater. "You humans have such strange ways of seeing things." She sat back on her throne, resting her chin on her hand. "I have a proposal for you, Han Junho. You will not be executed today." Junho felt relief flood through him. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. You will stay here, in this palace. You will teach me about humanity, your culture, your way of thinking. I wish to understand the species that has defied my empire for 20 years. "You want me to be your teacher?" Junho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I want to know why humans fight so fiercely for worlds that are barely habitable. Why you cling to hope even when all logic says you should surrender. Why you are so chaotic and yet so dangerous." She leaned forward. "Help me understand your people, and you will live. Refuse, and you are no use to me." It wasn't really a choice. But something in the way she asked made Junho think this was about more than just military intelligence. She seemed genuinely curious. "I'll teach you," Junho said. "But I want something in return." The guards who had returned to the room tensed. No one made demands of the Queen. Queen Aerie raised one elegant hand, stopping the guards. "Bold, what do you want?" "Teach me about your people. If I'm going to explain humans to you, you should explain Velkari to me. A fair exchange." The Queen stared at him. Then she smiled. It was a dangerous smile, all sharp teeth and bright eyes. "You are either the bravest human I have met, or the most suicidal. Very well. We have an agreement." She stood and gestured to the guards. "Take him to the West Tower. Give him proper quarters, not a cell. He is a guest now. A very special guest who cannot leave." As the guards led Junho away, he glanced back at the throne. Queen Aerie was watching him with those golden eyes. For just a moment he saw something in her expression that wasn't cruelty or coldness. It was interest. Junho didn't know if that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. 3 months had passed since Junho became Queen Aerie's prisoner and teacher. His quarters in the West Tower were nicer than any apartment he'd ever lived in. Large windows showed the alien city below, with its floating gardens and buildings that seemed to grow from the ground like trees. He had books, both human and Velkari. He had access to music and art. He had everything except freedom. Every day, guards escorted him to different parts of the palace. Sometimes he met the Queen in her private study. Sometimes in the garden. Sometimes in the training halls where Velkari warriors practiced their combat forms. She wanted to learn, and she was a very good student. Today, they sat in the garden under a tree with silver leaves. Junho had brought his old tablet, one of the few personal items the guards had let him keep. On it, he'd saved hundreds of human poems and songs. "This one is very old," Junho said, pulling up a poem on the screen. "It's from my country, from Earth. It was written over 1,000 years ago." Queen Aerie leaned closer. She smelled like rain and something spicy he couldn't name. Her patterns glowed softly in the shade of the tree. "Read it to me, in your language." Junho read the poem in Korean. The words felt good in his mouth, familiar and comforting. He'd been speaking English and broken Velkari for so long that his own language felt like water after days in a desert. When he finished, Queen Aerie was quiet. "What does it mean?" "It's about longing, about missing someone you love. The poet wrote it while separated from his wife during a war. Junho looked up at the alien sky, so different from Earth's. He talks about looking at the moon and knowing she's looking at the same moon, even though they're far apart. Your people write about love even during war, the Queen said softly. We write about glory and honor and victory, but not love. Don't your people love? Of course, but we do not speak of it so openly. Love is private, sacred. To write it down for others to see feels... She searched for the word. Vulnerable. That's the point, Junho said. Humans believe that being vulnerable is brave, that sharing your feelings, even the painful ones, is a kind of strength. Queen Aery's patterns flickered in a way Junho had learned meant she was thinking deeply. Your species is very strange. You've said that at least 100 times. Because it remains true. But she was smiling as she said it. Over the weeks, Junho had learned to read her expressions. The Velkari didn't show emotion the same way humans did. Their faces moved less, but their bioluminescent patterns told whole stories. Bright and fast meant excitement or anger. Slow and dim meant sadness or deep thought. Pulsing meant curiosity. And when the patterns spiraled, that meant she was amused. Right now her patterns were spiraling. What about you? Junho asked. Tell me about Velkari art. You must have poems or songs or something. We have the combat forms, Queen Aery said, standing gracefully. Come, I will show you. They walked to one of the training halls. It was late afternoon, and most warriors were finished with their practice. The hall was empty except for them. The floor was smooth stone that seemed to absorb sound. Weapons hung on the walls, beautiful and deadly. Queen Aery removed her outer robe, revealing the fitted armor beneath. Combat, for my people, is not just fighting. It is meditation, art, philosophy. Every movement has meaning. She began to move through a sequence of forms. Her body flowed like water, each strike and block perfectly balanced. But it wasn't violent. It was like watching a dance. Her hands cut through the air with precision. Her feet barely made a sound on the stone. The patterns on her skin pulsed in rhythm with her movements. Junho watched, fascinated. He'd seen Velkari warriors fight in videos, brutal and efficient. This was different. This was beautiful. When she finished, Queen Aery wasn't even breathing hard. Each form tells a story. That one is called The River Defending Her Banks. It teaches that true strength is not in attacking, but in protecting what matters. It's incredible, Junho said honestly. Can you teach me? The Queen looked surprised. You wish to learn our combat forms? You're learning human poetry. Seems fair. For a moment he thought she'd refuse. Then she nodded. Very well. But you must understand, these forms take years to master. You will not be good at this. I'm okay with that. She positioned him in the starting stance, adjusting his arms and legs with gentle touches. Her hands were warm. Velkari bodies are different from human bodies. You will have to adapt. Now copy what I do. Slowly. Junho tried. He really did. But his body didn't want to move the way hers did. He wobbled. He lost his balance. At one point, he nearly fell flat on his face. Queen Aery caught his arm, steadying him. You are terrible at this. Thanks for the encouragement. But, she continued, and her pattern spiraled with amusement. You are trying. That matters more than success. The first lesson of the forms is persistence. They practiced until Junho's muscles ached. The Queen was patient, showing him the same movements over and over. She never got frustrated, even when he made the same mistakes repeatedly. As the artificial lights in the hall began to glow brighter for evening, they finally stopped. Junho collapsed onto a bench, breathing hard. Queen Aery sat beside him, barely winded. Why do you do this? She asked suddenly. Do what? Try so hard, learn our language, our customs. You are a prisoner. You could simply exist here and wait for your people to rescue you. Instead, you engage with everything. Junho thought about his answer carefully. Because you're not what I was taught to expect. Human children learn that Velkari are monsters, savage conquerors who destroy everything they touch. But you're not that. You have art and philosophy and beauty. You have honor. And if I can understand you, really understand you, maybe I can help others understand too. Maybe this war doesn't have to last forever. Queen Aerie was very still. Her patterns had stopped moving entirely. You think one human and one Velkari talking in a garden can stop a war? I think everything big starts with something small, Junho said. Every war started with one misunderstanding. Maybe peace can start with one conversation. The queen stood and walked to the window. The city lights were coming on below, turning the night into a tapestry of colors. I have been at war my entire reign. 20 years of fighting, 20 years of sending warriors to die on distant worlds. Do you know how many of my people I have lost? Too many, Junho said softly. Yes, too many. She turned back to him. And do you know what the hardest part is? I do not remember why we started fighting. Not really. There were border disputes, resource conflicts, misunderstandings that became insults that became battles. And now we are locked in this cycle, and neither side can back down without appearing weak. Then maybe it's time to be brave instead of strong, Junho suggested. Queen Aerie laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably the hardest thing either of our species could do. But that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. The queen returned to the bench and sat beside him again. They were closer now than they'd been before. Junho could see the tiny details in her patterns, the way they moved like waves on water. Tell me something true, Han Junho, she said quietly. Do you hate me? For what my people have done to yours? Junho considered lying, considered saying yes to maintain some distance, but he'd been honest with her from the beginning. No, I don't hate you. I think you're trying to protect your people the only way you know how, just like human leaders do. The tragedy is that we're both trying so hard to protect our own that we forget the other side is doing the same thing. Queen Aerie reached out and placed her hand over his. Her skin was warm and smooth. You are a strange man, Han Junho. 3 months ago you were my prisoner. Now you are something else. I am not certain what. Maybe I'm becoming your friend, Junho said. The queen's patterns pulsed softly. Perhaps you are. They sat together in the training hall as the city lights grew brighter and the alien stars emerged in the sky above. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Something had shifted between them, something neither fully understood yet. In that moment, Junho realized he wasn't counting the days until rescue anymore. And that scared him more than anything else had since his capture. Junho woke to the sound of breaking glass. His hand reached automatically for the light panel beside his bed, but before he could touch it, something sharp pressed against his throat. Don't move, human! The voice spoke in heavily accented English. Don't make a sound! Junho froze. His eyes adjusted to the darkness. 3 figures stood in his room, all wearing the armor of palace guards. But something was wrong. Real guards wouldn't sneak into his room in the middle of the night. Who are you? Junho whispered. Silence. The blade pressed harder against his skin. He felt a drop of blood run down his neck. You have poisoned our queen's mind with your human lies. Tonight, that ends. Junho's heart hammered. He'd been so comfortable these past months that he'd forgotten. He was still a prisoner, still an enemy, still someone that many Velkari would rather see dead. The queen will, he started. The queen is weak, another figure spat. She spends her time with you instead of planning our victory. She questions the war. She speaks of understanding the enemy. This is not the leader we need." The blade lifted from Junho's throat. For one hopeful second, he thought they were leaving. Then he saw the figure raise the weapon high, ready to strike down. The door exploded inward. Queen Aerie stood in the doorway, and she was terrifying. Her patterns blazed brilliant white, so bright they hurt to look at. She wore no armor, only sleeping robes, but she moved like lightning. The guard with the blade didn't even have time to turn before she had him on the ground, her foot on his chest, his own weapon at his throat. The other two guards rushed at her. She moved between them like wind, striking with precision. Within seconds, both were unconscious on the floor. The entire fight had taken maybe 10 seconds. Palace guards rushed in behind her, real ones loyal to the queen. They secured the three attackers with energy restraints. Queen Aerie stood over them, breathing hard, her patterns still blazing with fury. "Take them to the holding cells," she commanded. "I will deal with them personally in the morning." "Your Majesty," one of the loyal guards said nervously, "perhaps the human should also be secured, for his own safety." "No," the Queen's voice was ice. "Double the guards on this tower. Put our most trusted warriors here. If anyone else tries to harm him, they answer to me personally." The guards bowed and dragged the unconscious attackers away. Queen Aerie stood in the wreckage of Junho's room, her patterns slowly fading from brilliant white to their normal soft glow. "Are you hurt?" she asked, turning to him. Junho touched his neck. His fingers came away with a little blood, but the cut wasn't deep. "I'm okay. You got here in time." "I should not have had to get here at all." The Queen looked around at the broken glass, the overturned furniture. "This is my fault. I have been naive. I knew some of my court disliked your presence, but I did not think they would act against you." "Who were they?" "Soldiers loyal to my cousin Hyejin. She believes I am becoming too soft, too willing to consider peace." Queen Aerie walked to the window and looked out at the city. "She is not entirely wrong." Junho stood carefully, his legs still shaky from fear. "You saved my life, and I will continue to do so. You are under my protection." She turned back to him. "But Junho, you must understand. This changes things. There are those in my court who will see any attempt at peace as betrayal. They have known only war. They do not know how to imagine anything else." "What happens now?" Queen Aerie was quiet for a long moment. "In 3 days, there is a military council. We are planning our next major offensive against human colonies. I am expected to approve the target and allocate resources." Junho felt cold. "Which colonies?" "The Meridian Cluster. 5 worlds. Including Station Meridian where you were captured." "No." The word came out before Junho could stop it. "Please, no. Those worlds are mostly civilian. Refugees from other conflicts, families, research stations. There's barely any military presence." "That is not what our intelligence reports say." "Your intelligence is wrong," Junho said desperately. "I've been to those worlds. I know what's there. If you attack them, thousands of innocent people will die." The Queen's patterns flickered with some emotion he couldn't read. "And if we do not attack them, your military will use them as staging grounds for attacks on our colonies. It is strategic, necessary. It's murder. It is war." They stared at each other across the ruined room. Junho knew he should stay quiet. Should accept that he couldn't change military decisions made by an empire, but he couldn't. Not when he knew the truth. "Let me show you," he said. "I have records, photos, reports from when I worked there. Let me prove to you that those worlds aren't military targets. Please." "Why should I believe human records? They could be falsified." "Because you know me," Junho said. "You've spent 3 months learning to read human emotions. Look at me. Listen to me. Am I lying?" Queen Aerie studied him with those golden eyes. Her patterns pulsed slowly. Finally, she nodded. "Show me." They spent the rest of the night in Junho's quarters. He pulled up every file he had on his tablet, every photo and report from his time in the Meridian cluster. Pictures of refugee children in schools, medical centers treating sick families, research stations studying plant growth and water purification. Everything that proved these were civilian worlds. Queen Airy examined each file carefully. She asked questions, sharp and intelligent. She cross-referenced his information with her own intelligence reports. As the alien sun began to rise, painting the sky in colors Earth had never seen, she sat back with a heavy sigh. "You are right," she said quietly. "Our intelligence is incomplete. They show military structures because we expected to find military structures. We saw what we wanted to see." "What will you do?" "I do not know yet. If I cancel the attack, my military commanders will question my judgment. Hyejin will use it as evidence that you have corrupted me. But if I allow the attack to proceed—" She looked at the photos of children playing in a schoolyard. "I cannot. I will not become the monster humans believe all Velkari to be." "Then change the target. Choose a military installation instead. Something legitimate." Queen Airy stood and paced the room. "It is not that simple. The Meridian attack is part of a larger strategy. Changing it means changing everything." She stopped and looked at him. "I need time to think, to plan. Can you keep this secret? If Hyejin learns I am reconsidering, she will move against me." "I won't tell anyone," Junho promised. The Queen moved to the door, then paused. "Junho, what you did tonight, showing me the truth even though it put you at risk, even though I might have been angry, that took courage. I couldn't let innocent people die. Most prisoners would stay silent, would not risk angering their captor." Her patterns pulsed with something warm. "You continue to surprise me, Han Junho." After she left, Junho couldn't sleep. He cleaned up the broken glass and straightened his furniture as the sun rose higher. His hands were still shaking, though he wasn't sure if it was from the assassination attempt or from the knowledge that he'd just interfered with alien military planning. 2 days later, Queen Airy summoned him to the war room. He'd never been allowed there before. It was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays showing star systems and fleet positions. A dozen high-ranking military officers stood around a central table, their patterns bright with anticipation. And there, standing near the Queen, was Hyejin. She was shorter than Airy, but somehow more intimidating, with patterns that moved like angry storms. When she saw Junho, her eyes narrowed. "Why is the human here?" she demanded. "Because I have decided he should witness our planning," Queen Airy said calmly. "He is a cultural advisor. Let him advise." Junho saw the trap immediately. If he stayed silent, the attack would proceed. If he spoke up in front of the military council, he would paint himself as an enemy. Either way, he lost. Queen Airy activated the display, but instead of showing the Meridian cluster, it showed a different system entirely. "I have reconsidered our target. Instead of the Meridian worlds, we will strike here. The Tanaka Belt installations, confirmed military stronghold, shipyards, supply depots, minimal civilian presence." The room erupted in arguments. Commanders demanded to know why the strategy had changed. Hyejin's patterns blazed with fury. "You make this decision because of him," she accused, pointing at Junho. "The human has manipulated you." "I make this decision because it is strategically sound," Queen Airy said coldly. "The Meridian attack would have cost us more in resources than it gained. The Tanaka Belt is a more valuable target, unless you wish to question my military judgment." It was a challenge. In Velkari culture, openly questioning a superior's judgment was grounds for formal combat. Hyejin's patterns flickered with rage, but she bowed her head. "No, my queen." "Then we are agreed. Prepare the fleets. As the commanders filed out, Hyejin passed close to Junho. This is not over, human, she whispered in English. You have made a powerful enemy. When they were alone, Junho let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. That was risky. Everything worth doing is risky, Queen Aerie said. She looked tired. The patterns on her skin were dim. I have bought us time, but Hyejin is right about one thing. This is not over. Junho nodded. He'd wanted to prevent innocent deaths, and he had. But he'd also set forces in motion that neither of them could fully control. Outside the war room, in the beautiful corridors of the palace, the real battle was just beginning. The palace gardens at night were Junho's favorite place. After months of confinement, even the limited freedom of walking among the alien plants and glowing fountains felt precious. The gardens were enormous, filled with vegetation from dozens of Velkari worlds. Some plants sang when the wind touched them. Others released perfume that changed colors in the air. It was like walking through a dream. Tonight was the Festival of Stars, a Velkari celebration that happened once a year when their home world's 3 moons aligned in the sky. The palace was filled with nobles and military commanders, all dressed in ceremonial armor that sparkled like jewelry. Music floated through the halls, strange and beautiful, played on instruments Junho had never seen before. He hadn't been invited to the celebration. He understood why. Despite Queen Aerie's protection, he was still a human, still technically a prisoner. His presence at an important cultural event would be seen as an insult by many. So he'd stayed in his quarters until late, then snuck out to the gardens when he thought everyone would be too distracted to notice. The night air was warm. The 3 moons hung overhead like jewels, one silver, one gold, one deep red. Their combined light painted everything in colors that Earth had never known. Junho found a bench near a fountain that bubbled with liquid that glowed faintly blue. He sat and looked up at the alien sky, thinking about home. He'd been here 6 months now, half a year. His family must think he was dead. His friends, his colleagues at the diplomatic corps. The Terran coalition probably held a memorial service for him, and the others captured at Station Meridian. They'd moved on. The war continued. And here he was, in an enemy palace, teaching poetry to an alien queen. The strange part was that he didn't hate it here. He should. He should be planning escape, thinking only of returning to human space. Instead, he found himself looking forward to his daily lessons with Aerie. He enjoyed learning about Velkari culture. He liked the palace, the gardens, even some of the guards who had become almost friendly. And the queen herself. Junho pushed that thought away. It was dangerous, foolish. She was an alien, the ruler of an empire at war with his people. The fact that she was brilliant and curious and surprisingly kind didn't change the fundamental impossibility of what he'd started to feel. A sound from the palace drew his attention. The grand balcony overlooking the gardens had filled with people. The ceremony must be reaching its peak. Junho shrank back into the shadows of a large plant, not wanting to be seen. Then Queen Aerie stepped onto the balcony. She wore ceremonial armor that took Junho's breath away. It was white and silver, fitted perfectly to her form, decorated with patterns that matched the ones on her skin. Her patterns glowed brilliantly, pulsing in rhythm with the music. A crown of what looked like crystallized light rested on her head. She looked like something from a legend, powerful and remote, and achingly beautiful. She was giving a speech in Velkari, her voice carrying across the garden. Junho had learned enough of the language to understand most of it. She spoke of honor and tradition, of the strength of their people, of the wars they had fought and the victories they had won. It was the speech a warrior queen should give, full of pride and power. But Junho had learned to read the subtle signs in her patterns. He saw the way they dimmed slightly when she spoke of war. He saw how they brightened when she mentioned the beauty of their culture and art. He knew that beneath the ceremonial armor and the warriors' words, there was someone who was tired of fighting, someone who wanted something different but didn't know how to reach for it. The speech ended. The crowd on the balcony applauded, their patterns flashing in appreciation. Queen Aerie stood tall and regal, accepting their praise. But Junho could see what they couldn't. She was lonely, surrounded by hundreds of people, celebrated and honored, and completely alone. He understood. He was lonely too. The crowd began to disperse, returning to the celebration inside. Queen Aerie remained on the balcony for a moment, looking out at the gardens. Then she turned and disappeared back into the palace. Junho sat in the shadows and felt something break open inside his chest. He'd been denying it for weeks, maybe months, telling himself it was just gratitude for her protecting him. Just intellectual fascination with an alien culture, just the bond between teacher and student. But it wasn't any of those things. He loved her. The realization was terrifying. She was an alien, a queen, his captor, the woman who could order his death with a word. They were from different species, different worlds, different everything. There was no possible future where this feeling made sense or could lead anywhere but pain. And yet, Junho looked up at the three moons and whispered in Korean, the language of his heart, the words he could never say in any language she might understand. "I wish I could wed her." "Then you shall." The response came in perfect Korean. Junho spun around so fast he nearly fell off the bench. Queen Aerie stood behind him. She'd changed from the ceremonial armor into simpler robes. Her patterns glowed softly in the moonlight. And she was looking at him with an expression he'd never seen before. You speak Korean?" Junho's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I have been learning," she said, still in his language. Her accent was strange, but clear. "For 3 months now. I wanted to understand you better, the real you, the one who speaks in his own words, not in translation." Junho couldn't breathe. "You heard what I said." "Yes." She moved closer. "I came to the gardens because the ceremony felt hollow. All those people celebrating war and glory, and all I could think about was how tired I am of it. I saw you here alone, and I thought perhaps we could speak. Then I heard you whisper those words. I didn't mean—" Junho started, but she held up a hand. "Do not apologize. Do not take it back." Her patterns pulsed with something intense. "Do you know why I allowed you to live that first day? Why I made you my teacher instead of executing you?" Junho shook his head, unable to speak. "Because when you stood in my throne room, captured and powerless, you did not beg. You spoke to me as an equal. You saw me not as a monster, but as a person. For the first time in my entire reign, someone looked at me and saw who I truly was, not just my title or my power." She stepped even closer. "I have been fascinated by you since that moment. I told myself it was intellectual curiosity, cultural interest. But tonight, standing on that balcony giving the same speech I give every year, all I could think was that I wished you were there beside me. Not as a prisoner, not as a teacher. As something more." "This is impossible," Junho said. "I'm human. You're Velkari. Our people are at war. Even if we both felt this, there's no way it could work." "I am the queen," Aerie said simply. "I decide what is possible." "Your court would never accept it. Hyejin is already trying to have me killed. If she knew you felt this way, then let her try. Let them all try." Queen Aerie's patterns blazed brighter. "I have spent 20 years doing what was expected of me, fighting wars I did not start, making decisions based on tradition and duty. And I am tired, Junho. I am tired of being alone, tired of ruling a people who only want more war, tired of pretending that this is all there is. She reached out and took his hands in hers. Her skin was warm and smooth. You asked me once if my people love. We do. But we are taught to hide it, to make it small and secret. You humans do the opposite. You love openly, boldly, even when it is foolish, even when it might destroy you. And I have spent months learning from you, seeing the world through your eyes. And I realize I do not want to love the Velkari way anymore. I want to love like a human, boldly, impossibly, without reservation. Junho's eyes stung. He'd been alone for so long, first in captivity and then in his growing feelings. To hear that she felt the same way was overwhelming. If we do this, everything changes. Your court, the war, everything. Good, Queen Ares said fiercely. Let it all change. I am done fighting a war that serves no one. I am done pretending there is no other way. If a human and a Velkari can find understanding, can find this connection, then perhaps our peoples can too. They'll call you weak. They'll say I corrupted you. Let them. She smiled, and it was the most genuine smile he'd ever seen on her face. You did corrupt me, Han Junho. You corrupted me with hope, with the possibility that things could be different, with the idea that strength is not just in fighting, but in choosing peace when everyone expects war. Junho stood. They were close now, close enough that he could see every subtle shift in her patterns. I don't know how this works. Our cultures, our biology. I don't even know if... She kissed him. It was different from kissing a human, but not wrong. Her lips were softer than he expected, warmer. Her patterns flared brilliant white, so bright he could see them even with his eyes closed. When they broke apart, both were trembling. We will figure it out, Queen Ares said softly. Together, if you are willing. I'm willing, Junho said. I'm terrified, but I'm willing. Good, because tomorrow I am going to announce to my court that I am considering a formal alliance with humanity. A true peace treaty. And I am going to tell them that you are no longer my prisoner but my advisor, my partner in this endeavor. Hyejin will use this against you. I know, but I am done hiding, done pretending. If we are to have any chance at peace, it must begin with honesty, with truth, with two people from opposite sides of a war choosing something different. They stood together in the garden under the 3 moons. Around them, the plants sang their night songs. The glowing fountain bubbled softly, and for the first time since his capture, Junho felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. What happens now? He asked. Queen Ares smiled. Now we prepare for war. Not with weapons, but with words. Not against your people or mine, but against the idea that war is the only way. She squeezed his hands. Are you ready? Junho thought about his whispered wish, about the impossible thing he'd asked for in a moment of weakness, and about the even more impossible thing that was now happening. I'm ready, he said. They walked back toward the palace together, not as prisoner and captor, but as something new, something that had never existed before. And above them, the 3 moons shone down on a garden where the future of 2 species had just changed forever. The morning after the Festival of Stars, Junho woke to the sound of shouting in the corridors. He dressed quickly and opened his door to find 2 of his regular guards standing there, looking nervous. Their patterns flickered with anxiety. What's happening? Junho asked. The Queen has called an emergency council meeting, one guard said in broken English. You are to attend. Me? Why? She did not say. Come, now. They escorted him through the palace. Usually the halls were quiet and dignified. Today they were chaos. Nobles rushed back and forth. Guards stood in tight clusters, whispering urgently. Junho caught fragments of Velkari conversation, words like scandal and betrayal and the human. His stomach tightened. News had spread somehow. Someone had seen them in the garden last night, or maybe Eri had already made her announcement. Either way, the storm they'd known was coming had arrived ahead of schedule. The council chamber was packed. Every high-ranking noble and military commander seemed to be there. Junho was led to a spot near the queen's throne, exposed and visible to everyone. The stares he received were hostile, patterns flashing with anger and disgust. He kept his head up, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Queen Eri entered. She wore her full ceremonial armor, the kind she only used for the most important occasions. Her patterns glowed steady and bright, showing no fear. She climbed the steps to her throne and stood before it, rather than sitting, a sign she intended to address them as equals rather than subjects. "Members of the council," she began in Velkari, her voice carrying through the chamber. "I have called you here to announce a decision that will change the course of our empire." The room went deathly silent. For 20 years, we have been at war with humanity. For 20 years, our warriors have died on distant worlds fighting an enemy we do not understand. We call them monsters. They call us the same. And the cycle continues, generation after generation, with no end in sight. She paused. "I am here to tell you that this must end." Angry murmurs rippled through the chamber. Queen Eri raised her hand for silence. "I have spent the past 6 months studying humanity through one of their own. Han Junho has taught me their language, their culture, their way of thinking, and I have learned that they are not so different from us. They value honor, family, and the protection of their people. They create art and philosophy. They love and they grieve. They are not monsters. They are people." "They are enemies," someone shouted from the crowd. Junho couldn't see who. "They are enemies because we have made them enemies," Queen Eri countered. "Because we refuse to see them as anything else. But what if we chose differently? What if we sought to understand rather than destroy?" Hyejin stepped forward from the crowd. Her patterns blazed with fury. "You have been corrupted by the human. This is exactly what I warned the council about. He has poisoned your mind with his words." "He has opened my mind with truth," the queen said firmly, "and I will not apologize for that. I am announcing my intention to pursue a formal peace treaty with the Terran coalition. A real peace, not a temporary ceasefire. A complete end to hostilities." The chamber erupted. Everyone seemed to be shouting at once. Guards moved forward to maintain order, but even they looked uncertain. Junho stood frozen, watching the chaos unfold around him. "This is madness," Hyejin's voice cut through the noise. "The humans will see this as weakness. They will use any treaty to position themselves for a greater attack. They cannot be trusted." "And we can?" Queen Eri challenged. "We who bombed their civilian stations? We who treated their diplomats as spies? If we cannot be trusted, why should they trust us? Someone must extend a hand first. I choose to be that someone." "Because of him," Hyejin pointed at Junho. "Because you have developed feelings for the enemy. This is not policy. This is not strategy. This is emotion clouding your judgment." The queen's patterns flared brilliant white. "You accuse me of letting emotion rule my decisions? Then let me be clear. Yes, I have come to care for Han Junho. He has shown me courage and honesty that many in this chamber lack. But that is not why I seek peace. I seek peace because I am tired of sending our warriors to die in a war that serves no one. I seek peace because there is more to leadership than conquest. I seek peace because it is the right thing to do." "And who are you to decide what is right?" Hyejin demanded. "You may be queen, but you rule with the support of this council. If we believe your judgment is compromised, we have the right to challenge your authority." A dangerous silence fell. In Velkari culture, challenging a ruler's authority directly was a serious act. It meant a formal challenge, a trial that could end in the queen being removed from power. "Are you challenging me, Hiejin?" Queen Aerie asked coldly. Hiejin's patterns pulsed with satisfaction. She'd been waiting for this. "I am. By the ancient laws of our people, I claim the right to a trial of merit. If you truly believe peace is the correct path, prove it. Defend your position before the council, and let the human defend his presence here. If you both succeed, I will support your treaty. If you fail, you will abandon this foolishness and remove the human from the palace permanently." Queen Aerie looked at Junho. He could see the calculation in her eyes. If she refused the challenge, she'd appear weak, and the council would lose faith in her. If she accepted, she risked everything on his ability to convince a hostile audience that he was worth keeping alive. "I accept your challenge," the queen said. "When?" 3 days from now, the full trial of merit, both the debate and the physical test." Hiejin smiled. "Let us see if your human is truly worthy of standing beside a Velkari queen." The council adjourned in chaos. Junho was escorted back to his quarters by guards who wouldn't meet his eyes. Once alone, he paced his room, his mind racing. 3 days. He had 3 days to prepare to defend not just his presence in the palace, but the entire concept of human Velkari peace to a council that wanted him dead. That evening, Queen Aerie came to his quarters. She looked exhausted, her patterns dim. "I am sorry. I did not think Hiejin would move so quickly." "What exactly is a trial of merit?" Junho asked. "It is an ancient tradition. When a ruler's judgment is questioned, they must defend their decision through 2 tests. First, a formal debate before the entire court where you must prove the merit of your position. Second, a physical trial to demonstrate that you understand and respect Velkari ways." She sat heavily on his couch. "The debate will be difficult but manageable. You are good with words. But the physical trial—" "I'm not a warrior," Junho finished. "I can barely do the basic combat forms you taught me." "You do not need to win. You need to demonstrate courage and understanding. But it will not be easy. They will not make it easy." Junho sat beside her. "What happens if I fail?" "You will be exiled from the palace, returned to human space most likely, and I will lose the support of my council. I may even lose my throne." She looked at him. "I will not blame you if you wish to concede now." "To return home before the trial. Would that satisfy Hiejin?" "No. She would see it as proof that you and your people cannot be trusted. The war would continue, perhaps intensify, but you would be safe." Junho thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "No, I'm staying. We do this together." Queen Aerie's patterns brightened slightly. "You are certain?" "I'm terrified, but I'm certain." He took her hand. "You were right last night. Someone has to extend a hand first. Someone has to be brave enough to try something different. If that someone is us, then we see it through." "There is something else you should know," the Queen said quietly. "This morning, I sent a message to the Terran Coalition, through diplomatic channels. I told them I was holding peace talks and that you were my advisor in this, not my prisoner." Junho's eyes widened. "What did they say?" "They have not responded yet, but I wanted you to know that I have taken the first step. Your people now know you are alive. They know what we are attempting here." "Thank you," Junho said. It meant more than he could express. His family would know he was alive. His friends, everyone who thought he was dead. They sat together in silence for a while. Finally, Queen Aerie stood. "We begin preparation tomorrow. I will teach you everything I can about Velkari debate customs and combat philosophy. We will prepare you for both tests. Will it be enough? I do not know, but we will try." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Junho, no matter what happens in 3 days, I want you to know that I do not regret any of this. Even if we fail, even if I lose everything, knowing you has been worth it. Don't talk like that, Junho said. We're not going to fail. You sound very confident for someone who has never been through a Velkari trial. I have something they don't expect, Junho said with a small smile. I have human stubbornness. We're very good at not giving up even when we should. Queen Aerie laughed, genuine and surprised. Yes, you are. Her patterns spiraled with affection. Very well. We fight. Together. Together, Junho agreed. After she left, Junho stood at his window and looked out at the alien city. Somewhere out there in human space, people were receiving news that he was alive, that peace might be possible, that the war could end. He thought about the impossible wish he'd made in the garden, about the alien queen who'd heard him and said yes, about the trial they would face in 3 days that would determine not just their future, but the future of 2 entire species. He was just one human. She was just one Velkari. But sometimes, he thought, one connection between 2 people was enough to change everything. He just had to make sure he didn't mess it up. 3 days. He had 3 days to save the woman he loved, prove that humans and Velkari could coexist, and somehow not get killed in the process. No pressure at all. The day of the trial arrived too quickly. Junho hadn't slept. He'd spent the last 3 days studying Velkari debate customs, practicing combat forms until his muscles screamed, and memorizing every argument he could think of for why peace was possible. Queen Aerie had been with him every day, coaching him, encouraging him, preparing him for what was to come. Now, standing outside the grand hall where the trial would take place, Junho felt his confidence crumbling. Through the massive doors, he could hear hundreds of voices. The entire Velkari court was assembled, along with military commanders, nobles from distant worlds, and even representatives from allied species. Everyone wanted to watch the human try to defend himself. "Remember," Queen Aerie said beside him. She wore her ceremonial armor, her patterns glowing steady and calm, even though Junho knew she must be as nervous as he was. "Speak from the heart. They will try to anger you, to make you lose control. Do not let them. Stay calm. Stay honest." "What if honest isn't enough?" Junho asked. "Then we fall together. But at least we will have tried." She squeezed his hand briefly. "You are ready for this?" "I hope you're right." The doors opened. The grand hall was enormous, even larger than the throne room. Tiered seating rose on all sides like an amphitheater, every seat filled with Velkari, whose patterns flickered with anticipation. In the center was a raised platform where Junho would stand. Queen Aerie would sit in a special section with the other members of the royal family, required to watch but forbidden from interfering. Hyejin stood near the platform, her patterns bright with satisfaction. Beside her were 3 other nobles who would serve as questioners during the debate. They all looked at Junho like he was an insect they were about to step on. An elder Velkari, his patterns faded with age but his voice still strong, stepped forward. "We are gathered for a trial of merit. Han Junho, human, will defend his presence in this palace and his influence on our queen. If he succeeds in both the test of words and the test of strength, his position will be secured. If he fails either test, he will be removed from Velkari space permanently. Do you understand the terms?" "I do," Junho said. His voice came out stronger than he felt. "Then let the trial begin." Junho stepped onto the platform. Immediately, one of the questioners, a military commander named Daeon, spoke. "Human, you were captured as a spy. You have spent months in our palace learning our secrets, our military strategies, our weaknesses. Why should we believe you are not still serving your people's interests?" Junho had prepared for this question. "Because if I were a spy, I would tell you what you wanted to hear. I would encourage you to continue the war. A spy benefits from chaos and conflict. Instead, I have done the opposite. I have shown Queen Aerie that humans are not monsters. I have encouraged understanding. A spy would never do that because peace is bad for intelligence operations. Perhaps you are simply a clever spy, Daeon countered, playing a longer game. Then I'm playing a terrible game, Junho said. Because if peace happens, I lose all value as a spy. There would be nothing left to gather intelligence on. The only way my presence here makes sense is if I genuinely want peace. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The elder gestured for the next question. A noble named Bora spoke up. You have corrupted our queen with human ideas about love and weakness. In Velkari culture, love is private, not flaunted. Yet you and the queen openly display your attachment. This is shameful. Junho felt his face flush but kept his voice steady. With respect, I have not corrupted anyone. Queen Aerie chose to learn about human culture. She chose to see value in different ways of living. Is it corruption to learn? Is it weakness to care about someone? Humans believe that love is strength, not weakness. It takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes bravery to choose peace when war is easier. Weakness, Yejin said, stepping forward. You admit it yourself? Peace is harder than war? No. War is what requires strength. Peace is what the weak choose when they cannot win. This was the trap. Junho could feel it. If he argued that peace was harder, he'd be admitting Velkari were taking the easy path. If he argued war was harder, he'd be playing into Hyejin's narrative. He took a breath and chose a third option. You're both wrong. Peace and war aren't about easy or hard. They're about what you're trying to achieve. War is a tool for when diplomacy fails. But if war becomes the only tool you know how to use, you forget how to build anything. You only know how to destroy. The Velkari have been at war for 20 years. What have you built in that time? What art has been created? What scientific discoveries have been made? What children have grown up knowing peace? The hall went very quiet. Junho pressed on. Queen Aerie isn't weak for wanting peace. She's visionary. She sees that your empire has become so focused on war that you're forgetting everything else that makes your civilization great. I've seen your art, your philosophy, your incredible achievements. But none of that flourishes during endless war. Peace isn't weakness. Peace is the only way your culture survives. And what does a human know of our culture? Another questioner demanded. More than you might think, Junho said. I've studied it, lived it. Your queen has taught me your combat forms, your history, your values. And you know what I learned? That your people aren't naturally violent. Your oldest texts talk about harmony and balance. The warrior traditions were meant to protect, not to conquer. Somewhere along the way, you lost sight of that. You made war your identity instead of your last resort. You dare to lecture us on our own culture? Bora's patterns flashed with anger. I dare to remind you of what you already know, Junho said. Deep down, all of you know this war has gone on too long. You know that your children deserve better than to grow up preparing for battles. You know that humans aren't monsters, just like you're not monsters. We're two species who got locked in a cycle of violence and forgot how to stop. I'm here to help you remember. The questions continued for hours. They attacked his character, his motives, his relationship with the queen. They questioned every decision she'd made since his arrival. They tried to make him angry, tried to get him to insult them or lose control. But Junho held firm. For every attack, he had a response. For every accusation, he had a truth. He spoke about the refugee children in the Meridian cluster who would have died if Queen Aerie hadn't changed the attack plans. He spoke about the human families who just wanted to live in peace. He spoke about the Velkari warriors who'd told him they were tired of fighting. He spoke from his heart, honestly and openly, exactly as the queen had advised. Finally, the elder raised his hand. Enough. The test of words is complete. We will now move to the test of strength. Junho was exhausted, but there was no break. Guards led him from the grand hall to the training arena. The entire assembly followed, filling the viewing platforms around the circular combat space. In the center of the arena stood a Velkari warrior. He was massive, his armor scarred from countless battles. His patterns moved like lightning. This was who Junho would face. The test is simple, the elder announced. You must last 3 minutes against our champion. You do not need to win. You need only to demonstrate that you understand Velkari combat philosophy and possess the courage to stand against a superior opponent. 3 minutes. It sounded like nothing. But Junho knew that 3 minutes against a trained Velkari warrior would feel like an eternity. Queen Aerie caught his eye from the viewing platform. Her patterns pulsed with encouragement. He nodded to her. The warrior drew his weapon, a staff that crackled with energy. Junho had been given the same. The weapon felt heavy and foreign in his hands. Begin, the elder said. The warrior attacked immediately. Junho barely got his staff up in time to block. The impact sent shocks through his arms. He stumbled back, already off balance. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. The human was going to lose in seconds. But Junho remembered what Queen Aerie had taught him. The combat forms weren't about winning through strength. They were about understanding your opponent, about patience and timing, about protection, not aggression. He stopped trying to attack. Instead, he focused on defense. He moved through the forms the queen had drilled into him, blocking and deflecting rather than striking. The warrior came at him again and again, each blow powerful enough to break bones if it connected. Junho's body screamed. His muscles burned. Sweat poured down his face. But he held on. He thought about why he was doing this. About the queen who'd saved his life. About the peace that could end decades of suffering. About proving that humans could learn, could adapt, could respect alien ways even while staying true to themselves. The warrior swept his legs. Junho went down hard, the breath knocked from his lungs, the warrior's staff pressed against his chest. It would be so easy to give up, to tap out, to end this. Instead, Junho swept his own staff at the warrior's legs, not trying to hurt him, but performing the move exactly as the forms taught. The warrior blocked easily, but he paused. His patterns flickered with what might have been surprise. Junho staggered to his feet. His vision blurred. Blood ran from his nose, but he raised his staff and moved into the next form. Not attacking. Just demonstrating that he knew what to do, that he respected the tradition even though he was hopelessly outmatched. Time, the elder called. 3 minutes. Junho had lasted 3 minutes. He dropped his staff and fell to his knees, gasping for air. The warrior approached him. For a terrifying moment, Junho thought he'd done something wrong. Then the warrior extended his hand. You fought with honor, not skill, but honor. That is what matters. Junho took the offered hand and was pulled to his feet. The warrior bowed slightly, a sign of respect. In the viewing stands, the patterns of the assembled Velkari pulsed with a mixture of emotions. Some were still hostile, but others, many others, flickered with something that looked like approval. Hyejin stood. The human has completed both tests, but the council must now vote. Has he proven himself worthy? The elder looked around the arena. Those who believe Han Junho has demonstrated merit, show your support. Patterns began to glow throughout the stands, slowly at first, then faster. Junho watched in amazement as more than half the assembly signaled their approval. Not everyone. Hyejin and her supporters remained dark, but enough. More than enough. The council has spoken, the elder announced. Han Junho has passed the trial of merit. His position in this palace is secured. The relief was overwhelming. Junho's legs gave out, and he sat down hard on the arena floor. He'd done it. Somehow, Impossibly, he'd done it. Queen Aerie was suddenly there, helping him up, her patterns blazing with joy and pride. "You were magnificent." "I was terrified," Junho admitted. "That is what made you magnificent." She looked around at the assembled court. "The human has proven himself. Now we move forward with peace negotiations. Any who wish to oppose this will face me directly." No one spoke. Even Hijin remained silent, though her patterns seethed with anger. The trial was over. The real work was about to begin. 6 months after the trial, Junho stood in front of a mirror in his quarters, adjusting the ceremonial robes that felt both strange and natural on his body. They were a blend of human and Velkari design, silk from Earth woven with the luminescent threads that Velkari used for their most important garments. When he moved, the fabric seemed to glow softly. Today was his wedding day. A knock on the door interrupted his nervous fidgeting. "Come in," he called. The door opened to reveal someone Junho had never expected to see again. Minho, his childhood friend, walked in wearing the dress uniform of the Terran Coalition Diplomatic Corps. He looked older than Junho remembered, more serious, but his smile was the same. "Minho?" Junho could barely believe it. "What are you doing here?" "You think I'd miss your wedding?" Minho crossed the room and pulled Junho into a tight hug. "When the Coalition received Queen Aerie's message 6 months ago, I volunteered to be part of the diplomatic mission. I've been on the human negotiation team ever since." "I didn't know. No one told me you were here." "Security protocols. We weren't sure how things would go at first." Minho stepped back and looked Junho over. "You look good. Tired, but good. I heard about the trial, about everything you've been through." "It's been quite a year," Junho admitted. "That's an understatement." Minho walked to the window, looking out at the city that had become familiar to Junho, but was still alien to most humans. "When we first heard you were alive, that you were working with the Velkari Queen, there were debates about whether you'd been brainwashed or compromised. Some people called you a traitor." Junho felt a pang of hurt. "Do you think I'm a traitor?" "No." Minho turned back to him. "I've been here for 6 months. I've watched you and Queen Aerie work on the peace treaty. I've seen how much you've accomplished. The ceasefire has held. Both sides are actually talking instead of shooting. Supply routes are opening up. Prisoners are being exchanged." He paused. "You did something no diplomat in 20 years could do. You made them see us as people. And you did it because you genuinely care about her. That's not treason. That's courage. Tell that to the people who think I betrayed humanity. Forget them. Most humans are celebrating. The war is ending, Junho. Actually ending. Do you know how many lives you've saved? How many families will be reunited? How many children will grow up not knowing war?" Minho smiled. "You're a hero, even if you don't feel like one." There was another knock. This time several people entered. Junho's parents came first, his mother crying happy tears, his father looking overwhelmed but proud. They'd arrived 2 days ago on the first civilian transport allowed into Velkari space. Seeing them again after a year of captivity had been overwhelming. Behind them came members of both the human and Velkari delegations, who'd become friends over the months of negotiations. The room filled with people, all of them here to witness something that had never happened before. "It is time," said one of the Velkari attendants, a young warrior named Kento, who'd become Junho's friend. "The ceremony will begin soon." They all moved toward the grand hall. As they walked through the palace corridors, Junho could see the changes the past 6 months had brought. Human flags hung alongside Velkari banners. The guards wore mixed insignias representing the new alliance. Translator devices hung on the walls so visitors could understand the various languages spoken in the palace. The building that had once been a fortress was becoming a bridge between worlds. The grand hall had been transformed. Flowers from both Earth and Valkyrie homeworlds filled the space, their mixed scents creating something entirely new. Representatives from dozens of species sat in the assembled seats. Some were allies of the Valkyrie, some were aligned with humanity, but today they were all witnesses to peace. At the front of the hall, under an arch woven from plants of both worlds, stood Queen Aerie. Junho's breath caught. She wore white armor, traditional for Valkyrie weddings, but it had been modified with human elements. Her patterns glowed brilliant gold, pulsing with joy and anticipation. A crown of flowers from Earth rested on her head, mixed with the crystallized light that Valkyrie royalty wore. She was stunning. Their eyes met across the hall, and she smiled. That smile said everything they'd been through together. The fear, the struggle, the impossible odds they'd overcome, and the love that had grown between them despite everything. Junho walked down the aisle, his parents on either side of him. It was a human tradition, being escorted by family. The Valkyrie didn't do this, but Aerie had insisted they incorporate both cultures into the ceremony. Everything they did today would honor both peoples. When he reached the arch, his parents stepped back. He stood facing Aerie, close enough to see every subtle shift in her patterns. She reached out and took his hands. The elder who'd overseen his trial stepped forward to officiate. Beside him stood a human official, a judge from Earth who'd volunteered to be part of this historic moment. Together, they would perform the ceremony. "We gather today," the elder began in Valkyrie, "to witness a union that transcends species, culture, and history. Han Junho and Queen Aerie have chosen to bind their lives together, and in doing so, have bound our peoples together. This is not just a marriage. It is a symbol of what is possible when we choose understanding over fear." The human judge continued in English. "Throughout human history, we've believed that love is the strongest force in the universe. It crosses borders, breaks down walls, and bridges impossible distances. Today, we see that truth proven in ways we never imagined. Junho and Aerie have shown us that even the deepest divides can be crossed." The ceremony continued, alternating between languages. Vows were exchanged in both English and Valkyrie. Rings were presented, a human tradition, along with the exchange of light threads, a Valkyrie custom where patterns were shared between partners. Junho felt Aerie tie the luminescent thread around his wrist, and when he looked down, he saw it pulsing in sync with the patterns on her skin. When it came time for him to speak his personal vows, Junho's voice shook slightly. "Aerie, a year ago I was your prisoner. You could have killed me, but you chose to learn from me instead. You chose curiosity over fear, understanding over hatred. You taught me that strength isn't just about fighting, but about having the courage to choose peace. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. I love you for your wisdom, your bravery, and your hope for a better future. I promise to stand beside you, to work with you to build the peace our peoples deserve, and to love you for all the days of my life, however many or few they may be." Aerie's patterns brightened until they were almost too brilliant to look at. When she spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "Junho, you came into my life as an enemy and became my greatest teacher. You showed me that true power lies not in domination, but in connection. You taught me to love openly, to hope boldly, and to believe that change is possible even when it seems impossible. You are brave and kind and wise, and I am honored to stand beside you. I promise to protect you, to learn from you, to build a future with you where our peoples can live in peace. I love you with all that I am." The officials spoke the final words of binding, words in both languages that sealed the marriage. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. "You may kiss," they said together. Junho and Aerie came together, and when their lips met, the entire hall erupted in celebration. Human cheers mixed with the musical sounds of Velkari joy. Patterns flashed in every color. It was chaos and beauty all at once. When they broke apart, both were crying. Aries' tears were iridescent, catching the light. Junho laughed and wiped his eyes. "We did it." "We did," Aries said. "Now comes the hard part." She was right. The marriage was a symbol, but the real work of peace was ongoing. The treaty had been signed 2 weeks ago in this same hall. Now came the years of implementation, of building trust between species that had fought for so long. There would be setbacks. There would be those on both sides who couldn't let go of hatred. But for the first time, there was genuine hope. The celebration after the ceremony lasted into the night. Music from both cultures filled the hall. Humans and Velkari mingled, some awkwardly, some with genuine warmth. Junho watched his mother try to communicate with a Velkari elder using exaggerated gestures and a translator device, both of them laughing at the confusion. He saw Minho deep in conversation with Kento, already becoming friends. He saw human children staring in awe at Velkari patterns, and Velkari youngsters fascinated by human dance. It wasn't perfect. There were still those who glared from corners, who refused to participate. Hyejin had boycotted the wedding entirely, but that was okay. Change didn't happen all at once. It happened in small steps, in individual choices to try something different. As the celebration continued, Junho and Eri slipped away to the garden where everything had begun. The 3 moons hung in the sky, just as they had the night Junho had whispered his impossible wish. "Do you remember this spot?" Junho asked. "I remember everything about that night," Eri said. She wrapped her arms around him, her patterns pulsing softly in the darkness. "I remember thinking how terrified I was, how impossible this seemed, how certain I was that we would fail. And now? Now I think perhaps impossible things are the only ones worth pursuing." She looked up at the moons. "My advisors tell me the first joint colony is being planned. A world where humans and Velkari will live together, build together. They're asking what we should call it. What do you think?" "I think we should call it hope, because that is what we gave each other. Hope that things could be different." Junho held her close, breathing in her scent, feeling the warmth of her patterns against his skin. "I love you. I love you too," she smiled. "My human husband, my partner, my impossible wish come true." They stood together in the garden as celebrations continued in the palace behind them. Above, the 3 moons shone down on 2 people from different worlds who had chosen each other despite every reason they shouldn't. And in that choice, they had changed everything. 5 years later, Junho stood in the same garden, but he wasn't alone. Somin, his daughter, ran ahead of him on chubby legs. She was 3 years old, a miracle of science and love. She had her mother's luminescent patterns, though they were softer, more subtle. She had her father's dark hair and eyes. She was the first human Velkari hybrid, born into a universe that was still learning to be at peace. "Papa, look!" Somin pointed at a flower that bloomed only at night. Her patterns pulsed with excitement, the way Aries did when she was happy. "I see it, sweetheart. It's beautiful." Queen Aerie joined them, carrying their 6-month-old son, Daeho. The boy was still too young to walk, but already showing signs of having inherited his mother's sharp mind. He gurgled contentedly in her arms. "The Earth delegation is arriving tomorrow," Aerie said. "They want to tour the new academy." The academy was another dream made real. A school where human and Velkari children learned together, taught by teachers from both species. There were now 5 of them across Allied space, with more being planned. "And the reports from the outer colonies?" Junho asked. "Positive. Trade is up. Mixed settlements are thriving. There are still problems, still those who resist, but every month it gets better." She shifted Daeho to her other arm. We are building something that will last, Junho. Something our children will inherit. A galaxy where war is history, not destiny. Somin ran back to them, holding the flower she'd picked. For Mama, she said in Velkari. Thank you, little star. Eri bent down so Somin could tuck the flower into her patterns, where it glowed softly. Junho looked at his family, this impossible family that shouldn't exist but did. He thought about that night years ago when he'd whispered a wish into the darkness, never expecting to be heard. He thought about everything they'd overcome to get here. The universe was vast and strange and full of impossible things. But the most impossible thing of all, he'd learned, was that sometimes dreams came true. Not easily, not without struggle, but they came true nonetheless. What are you thinking about? Eri asked. I'm thinking about how lucky I am. How lucky we all are. He pulled her close, careful of the baby in her arms, while Somin hugged both their legs. I'm thinking that this is worth everything we went through to get here. It is, Eri agreed. Her patterns spiraled with contentment and love. It absolutely is. Above them, the 3 moons shone bright. Below them, a city of 2 species lived in harmony. And in that garden, under alien stars, a family that bridged worlds stood together. The war was over. The peace was real. And the future, for the first time in a generation, was bright with hope. All because one human and one Velkari had been brave enough to choose love over fear, understanding over hatred, and peace over the easy path of continued war. All because of a whispered wish on a night when anything seemed possible. And it had been.